You have to do the right thing when it's time to do the right thing. If you don't, you might not have that opportunity again.
After you've succeeded in life, how do you give back? What do you do with your energy, your ambition, your time? What do you direct your career at? And this is exactly what Terry Virts has done and is doing. First as a fighter pilot, then as an astronaut, and now he's running for Senate here in Texas. As a fighter pilot, you quite literally need a killer instinct. And as it currently stands, that's the opposite of what you want in an astronaut.
Seneca was doing NASA risk management 2,000 years ago.
You're not going to be cool under pressure if you have not spent a lot of time under pressure. So talk to me about the decision to run for Senate.
What I'm hoping to do is bring some renaissance to the Democratic Party.
So obviously a lot of people want to be astronauts, right? It's a process of winnowing, right? Like eliminating the people they don't want to be astronauts, basically, right? This sort of selection process. They basically have the access to the best and the brightest of a generation, right?
Yeah.
What are they looking for? And I guess I'm more interested in what are they selecting out of the pool?
So my last job as an astronaut was to help go through thousands, I forgot how many thousands of applicants. And the good thing for NASA is that there's no shortage of talent. Like they don't have to advertise. They don't have to spend money on YouTube to advertise. And I was going through the engineers. I'm a fighter pilot, but I was looking at the engineer category because there were so many, and everybody had Python and everybody had been a senior engineer. It was literally the same resume over and over. So what we were looking for was something that made you stand out. Like, remember, there was one lady who had been a NASCAR mechanic. And I thought, and we do a lot. Half of what I did was mechanic work.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, take a look at her.
Yeah.
People who have operational experience. So pilots, even if you're not a pilot, even if you're just an engineer, you really need to have a private pilot's license, and because that's the best training that you can do. What I didn't want was thrill seekers. I don't want the wingsuiters jumping off the mountains and stuff. I want people who can do mountain climbing professionally or who can scuba dive, seriously. But the thrill seekers, that's not who you want to be in space with. So you're right. There's a winnowing process. You go through all these interviews, and kind of the end of it is you show up at NASA for an in-person interview. Yeah. And they go from tens of thousands down to, 20 people at a time. And everybody's competent, like everybody's smart, good by that point. You're just looking for who you want to spend 6 months stuck in a can with.
Sure.
And so we used to go to this bar called Petey's. It's shut down now, and you can drink all you want. Yeah. And they give you all the rope you need to hang yourself with. And so they want to hear things. They want to hear you say stuff. That's how they winnow you out. Because when you're in an interview, you're going to be nice and professional. Sure. And one of the things, Ryan, when I was there, I was so excited. I was the youngest guy. Everybody told me I had no chance of getting picked. You're too, you don't have any experience. I was just excited to be there. So I went and I talked to the secretary who had set up my plane reservations. And I was like, this is so cool. I'm here. And the guy that drove us around in the bus, like I would hang out and like, I can't believe whatever. I was nice to them. And I found out later that they asked the secretaries.
Right.
They asked the bus driver.
They do that in the NFL too. They interview the drivers that take them to and from the combine, to and from the team meetings, because they want to see who you are when you're not on. Yeah. Exactly.
That's a lesson. But the real lesson in life isn't to act better.
It's not just to increase how much you're performing.
Right.
It's supposed to be a window into your character.
Exactly. And so that's when nobody's looking. That's when your character comes out.
Yeah, the book that I'm working on now, a big section about it is about the Naval Academy during World War II. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that they spent this huge process trying to get all the best boys in the country at that time. This was only men then. And then as soon as they're accepted, it's about how do they get rid of as many of them as possible. Right? Like they're subjecting them to these stress tests and this unrelenting set of standards, and it's all about now we want to find some way to ship you out of here. Not because they don't want officers. And this was like we most desperately needed officers, never before and never again. And yet they're trying to see, do you actually have what it takes to do this thing?
The whole process of selecting people is an interesting one. And, what do you need? What you need to be a naval officer is different than what you need to be an astronaut is different than what you need to be a philosopher. Yeah. So
is there a big difference between what they need to be a fighter pilot and what you need to be an astronaut, other than like your knowledge of physics?
When people say, what are you? I think of myself as a fighter pilot more than I do astronaut, but what you need, fighter pilots can be kind of rough. Like we're not necessarily trained to be super, friendly. We're funny and good looking and humble, but we're not. So there's a lot more edge on fighter pilots. So being able to think under pressure and do dangerous things, that's the same. But when you're an astronaut, you also have to, work well with others, and you're in a civilian environment, and I flew with the Russians. And so there's a lot of those other softer skills that I think are more important. When you're a fighter pilot, your job is to kill people and break things, right? Yeah. So it's I
was going to say, as a fighter pilot, you quite literally need a killer instinct.
Yeah.
And as it currently stands, that's the opposite of what you want in an astronaut.
You would need a survival. Yeah. So there's some overlap, but as an astronaut, you need a few more. A few more softer skills.
And what about risk? Both require a certain risk tolerance.
Yeah.
And yet, maybe in an astronaut, you want a slightly more risk aversion. I don't know.
It's not so much aversion as it is smartness. Like if you're going to launch, the only way to be safe in a space program is to not launch. If you don't launch, you won't blow up on the rocket, right? We used to say that as a fighter pilot. The only way to be safe is to not fly.
Yeah.
So you need to look at risk smartly. And if there's risk that you can buy down, that you can get rid of, you get rid of it. And then there's some things that you can't buy down, and you just have to be willing to accept it. But you want to make sure that you are actively accepting those risks. And if it's something that you don't want to be surprised.
Yeah.
Like during Challenger and Columbia, I teach at Harvard Business School about risk in the Columbia and Challenger accidents. The vehicles were talking to us. We knew that on Challenger, we knew there was problems with O-rings. On Columbia, we knew there was problems with foam. And those were the two technical reasons why both of the shuttles blew up. But it was really a human reason. Like engineers were talking, the managers had time, budget, and schedule pressure, and so they ignored that risk. So for risk, you have to be smart about it.
Yeah, people think entrepreneurs are sort of risk junkies.
Right.
But it's really about the one big risk, and then you're looking to mitigate all the other risks from there.
Right.
If you're going all in all the time, it is guaranteed that you will go bust.
Right. And if that going bust kills you, then that's bad. If the going bust, as long as you're not dying, then you can accept those risks. But risk isn't. We could talk for an hour about. Yeah. So without risk, there's no reward, right? In the stock market, flying jets, whatever it is. But the risk junkie is a real thing. Like that's why I said when I'm choosing an astronaut, I don't want the guy doing wingsuiting.
Yeah.
If you're doing wingsuiting, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
If you're doing free solo on Yosemite, you have a limited lifespan. Like maybe you'll do it once and get lucky, but so.
And at the most, you'll kill yourself.
Which is not the worst thing, right? If you're flying an airliner, you might kill a whole airplane full of people if you're doing stupid things. So it's being smart about risk and being realistic about risk, and also understanding statistics. Like we have this chart at NASA where you look at how severe something might be and how often it happens. So if something happens every time you fly, but it doesn't matter, it's on one corner of that chart. If something happens often and it kills you dead, it's on the extreme corner of the chart. Like you're not going to fly in that risk. So if you can, I think an exercise that we did at NASA and is valuable anywhere, just sit down and brainstorm. What are all the things that might go wrong? It's not a perfect scientific thing, but you can look at all your risks, and then the things that are in the one corner of the chart, you have to get rid of. It happens often and it kills you dead. You have to get rid of those things. If it doesn't happen ever and it doesn't matter, then don't spend any time or money on that. And so going through that discipline process can help you figure out what risks you deal with, what risks you accept, and what's not acceptable.
Well, one of the Stoic exercises, the Latin word for it is premeditatio malorum, which is basically like a pre-mortem. So you think about all the things that could go wrong.
Wow.
And Seneca, who talks about this in 2,000 years ago, he's talking about this like you're about to travel by ship. He's like, look, you could be attacked by pirates. There could be a storm. There could be delays. You could go into quarantine. And I think sometimes people take this as, okay, that's depressing. You're missing the point. Some people think that it's an excuse for not going. Also missing the point. It's what's your plan if X, Y, and Z happens? And you're never going to be able to plan for everything, but even planning for something adjacent to this thing is how prepared are you for it not to go your way, because it almost certainly is not going to go your way.
Seneca was doing NASA risk management 2,000 years ago. Eisenhower has a quote. I think it's spectacular. Plans are useless,
Yes.
but planning is essential.
I think it's plans are worthless, but planning is everything.
Planning is, yeah.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yes.
I'm a loose quote.
Yes.
That's the fighter pilot quote of it. But it's true. Like
Yes.
the mental discipline of sitting down with a team, what might go wrong, what are the odds of that happening, going through that exercise. But then what Mike Tyson,
Yes.
no plan survives getting punched in the, once
Yeah.
you get punched in your face, the plans are out the door. So it's a very true thing. It's true for VC, for tech startups. It's true for a lot of things in life.
Yeah, I think I heard Chris Hadfield talk about this. He says astronauts aren't braver than other people. They're just meticulously prepared.
Or dumber. But anyway, yeah.
His thing was the reason you have to be prepared. This is my favorite part of the quote. He says, because he's like, something will go wrong and there's a bunch of things you can do.
Right.
And he says, but you always have to be aware there's no problem so bad that you cannot make it worse.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really kind of what it is, too. So it's the surprise.
Yeah.
That'll kill you. And then it's the impulsive reaction to the surprise that will make a bad problem into a fatal one.
Yeah. We used to say, I was a pilot on the space shuttle. There's no emergency that the pilot can't make worse with one switch throw.
Yeah.
And as an Air Force pilot, we have these 3 steps that every pilot learns. Maintain aircraft control, step 1. Step 2 is analyze the situation. And step 3 is take appropriate action. So the first thing you do is like fly the jet and don't hit the ground.
Yeah.
And then the second thing you do is think about it. And then the third thing you do is push the button.
Yeah.
So you don't push the button until step 3. Maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, and take appropriate action is a good way to go about life.
Is that what most of the astronaut, I assume to a certain degree, the pilot training is about, is just exposing you to simulations or high stress simulations over and over and over again to sort of disabuse you of the impulse to just press the button or jerk the wheel or freak out? You're not going to be cool under pressure if you have not spent a lot of time under pressure.
Absolutely. So that's why at NASA we had a T-38, which is like a mini fighter jet, training fighter jet. And that was the best training we did. In space, you're not flying a T-38. The physical stick and rudder skills you don't use them. But the mental, staying cool under pressure, thinking ahead of the jet, that mental discipline was super important. And the other thing, they put you in these simulators that are awful. I talk about that in my book, but they give you 5 million malfunctions and they're all smart. Like if they fail that computer and this electrical bus and that hydraulic, then, they fail all the things that are the worst case scenario to put you under pressure, because you just can't imagine what it's like to ride on a 4 million pound rocket going 25 times the speed of sound. That's a stress that you can't simulate.
Yeah.
Even a T-38 doesn't do that. So they simulate the stress in the simulator, but giving you some pretty intense stress is really important when you're an astronaut or when you're a business leader or, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, like Jim Lovell, who just died. Like
just passed away,
90% of it is probably in the just not freaking out when the cascade of problems begins.
I was flying over Iraq back in the day, and my wingman, we were in F-16s, which is single seat, single engine. And my wingman called me and said, head north. And the wingman never, ever, ever, ever says anything on the radio. And he certainly doesn't tell the flight lead what to do. So I knew something was up, and I rejoined on him, and there was smoke coming out.
His engine?
Oil was leaking. If you're in a car and your oil starts leaking, pull over and turn the engine off because it's about to seize. Can't do that in an F-16 over Iraq.
At what, 20,000 feet or something?
Yeah, well, we were probably 20 or 25,000 feet. So anyway, he made it back. It was incredibly tense moment. Barely glided in. The engine eventually seized. But while we were flying back, I told him some jokes. And I was an evaluator. So the week before that, I had just given him an evaluation on engine outlandings. And I dinged him on it. Like I gave him a bad grade because he messed it up. So as we were coming in, like his engine's out, he's wondering if he's going to have to eject over this ice-filled sea by Iran. I'm like, hey, dude, we'll count this for your next emergency simulator. So trying to use a little bit of humor in the emergency. That's the way I deal with things. I try and keep things low stress.
So how much different is the margin for error in a fighter jet versus space? Like, do you feel you're like, oh, the air is much thinner up here, kind of in the sense that if you screw up, there's no one's coming to get you. But
yeah. Once you're in orbit, things are pretty chill. Like, look, if a meteor goes through the spaceship, you're going to die. There's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
But you're not, it's during launch and landing that's a really dangerous time. So there are things that you can do that can kill you. But while you're in space, most of the things that can kill you are just going to come out of the blue. So, but I was also there for 7 months. So you can't be like on the edge of death every second for 7 months. You have to have some thing. Although on my last flight, we went through this period where the alarm was going off every day. And the alarms go off periodically. The Russians have terrible smoke detectors, and false alarms all the time. You get a fire alarm like every week or two. So that's normal. There's always something going on, but we went through a page like every day, multiple times. So I used humor. I had a little yellow sticky, and I had cautions, warnings, emergencies, and smells. Something was on fire, and we were smelling smoke. And so we were just like ticking off the things to try and use humor to deal with it. But I remember after about a month of like every day, I remember thinking, all right, that's enough. I'm done with the emergencies.
So I turned 38 this year, which is young, I guess. But I remember thinking when I was younger that it was old. Obviously, aging can be beautiful. It's important. You grow wiser. There's lessons learned, wisdom earned. But you also catch yourself in the mirror now and then, and you see your hair is graying, you see wrinkles, your knees hurt a little bit. It happens. But feeling old, that's optional. And that's where today's sponsor comes in. Qualia Senolytic is a first of its kind formula to help your body eliminate senescent cells. That sort of feeling you get as you get older can sometimes be senescent cells, what they call zombie cells. They linger in your body after their function, and they can use up energy and resources. And Qualia Senolytic is a groundbreaking, clinically tested supplement with 9 vegan plant-derived compounds that helps your body naturally eliminate these senescent cells. And if you want to experience the science of feeling younger, just go to qualialife.com/dailystoic for up to 50% off your purchase, and you can use the code dailystoic for 15% off. That's qualialife.com/dailystoic. Your older self will thank you. And thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode.
Did you ever see The Right Stuff, the movie The Right Stuff?
Yeah.
When they were doing the astronaut selection and they put that guy in the thing and he was all stressed out, and it wasn't nearly that bad, but it was kind of like that moment in The Right Stuff, like, all right, that's enough emergencies.
When they're probably trying to see, do you break under that kind of pressure?
Yeah.
Because it's like, whatever we're going to train you for, you probably can't simulate being subjected to a month of consecutive false alarms.
Right.
So they're trying to find analog tests that they can do on Earth to go, how does this person respond to all sorts of zaps and, smacks so they don't, break?
It's hard to simulate that stuff. Like the stress of being on a rocket, there's just nothing. You can't simulate being weightless on Earth for more than a few seconds.
Right.
We have an airplane, we call it the vomit comet, that you push over and you get 20 seconds of weightlessness. But yeah, the stuff in space is hard to simulate. So stress is an important part of that.
So did you always want to be a fighter pilot then? Was that, like you said, that's what you identify with? Was that the dream?
Yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut and a pilot. Like, I love those things. So I literally, when I was a little kid, I had an F-16 poster, the old YF-16. It was a red, white, and blue, the original F-16 from the 70s. I had that poster above my bed, and I had a space shuttle poster. They used to paint them all white. So I had like the original Columbia poster on my bed when I was a kid. And I was lucky. I got to do the thing. I got to do my dream. Most people don't get to do that. So. Yeah,
you did. Did it seem possible to you, or was it like it was a dream in the way that kids dream of being a rock star, but they don't? There's not actually a viable path to get there.
Yeah, my son in kindergarten, they go, "What do you want to be?" And he said he wanted to be an ice cream man, which is a pretty good dream for any kindergarten boy.
Sure.
As I was growing up, I'd be like, "I want to be an astronaut," and everybody's like, "Oh, that's nice. You should be an accountant," or something like that. So I just kind of smiled and ignored them. And then when I was 13, a family friend said, "You need to read The Right Stuff." And so I read that book. It's an amazing book. It's a great movie also. And it talked about how the early guys had been fighter pilots and then test pilots and then astronauts. And I didn't know how to be an astronaut. And like nobody in my family was an astronaut. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And that was the path that I ended up taking. A lot of luck involved also, but having that path, like mapping that out is an important step. And when I do motivational speaking, I have this thing. I say, don't tell yourself no. So whatever the dream you have, if you want to be a doctor, don't tell yourself no. There's a lot of work. You got to go to college and you got to get good grades and you got to do all these things. But the first step, and a lot of people I think don't do this, is don't tell yourself no. That's the most important step.
Well, and this can be the power of reading, because very few of us, our parents' friends aren't astronauts, right? And so sometimes it's reading or movies where you go, oh, this is a process. This is like, there actually is a resume that a reasonable person could put together that qualifies. It's not an easy resume, right? But it's, hey, if you do this, it's kind of that winnowing in reverse, right? If it's like you do that, you go, hey, the majority of all presidents have been lawyers, so like, going to law school is a good first step to putting yourself in a position to be in contention. Right. And so you read something and go, oh yeah, these guys, they got drafted or they went to one of the service academies. Suddenly they were miles closer to doing the thing than the vast majority of the population. Yeah. But the first step, you have to take that step to put yourself in that pool of people. If you want to be an actor, you got to move to Los Angeles and, and starve and probably fail. But unless you do that first step, you'll definitely fail. Yes. Yes. So, if you don't put yourself in contention, it's not going to happen, which is probably deep down why most people don't decide to enlist or move to LA, is that not being in contention is also a way to not fail at said dream, because you didn't actually try. It hurts to fail. Yes. It hurts to fail. And I failed at a lot of things, but I'm like, I got to give it a try. And then you can be honest with yourself. And then you can live with yourself when you're old, sitting in the old folks home. You can go, yeah, I gave it a shot. Yeah. So you're one of the handful of people who have ever left Earth. Yeah. So like when I look at that blue marble photo, it's just a photo to me. But you've seen Earth from that view. What does that do to a person? I think it depends on the person. It transformed me. I mean, Earth is a beautiful planet. I helped work on an IMAX movie called A Beautiful Planet. Yeah. Well, perfectly titled. It's just, you can't imagine how beautiful it was. I felt like I was seeing creation from God's point of view. Like it was a spiritual thing. The planet is just amazing. And I would have spent my whole time, when I got back, they told me that I took more pictures than any other astronaut. I took over 300,000 still photos, and I helped make the IMAX movie. But unfortunately you got to work. Like the reason you're up there, so there's a lot of science, which I love the science. I loved working on the space station. But what I really loved was looking out the window and trying to share it. And the pictures are great. I grew up looking at astronaut pictures, but it's just not the same. There's an emotional thing that happens when you look out the window. And there was one moment where I was looking out and I was like, hey, like that's Earth over there. That's my planet, and I'm not on my planet. It's pretty profound. What is the difference? Because I was thinking about this the other day. My wife and I, we were down in Florida on the Panhandle, and we were watching the sunset over the beach. And we were sort of like, we're trying to take a picture of it, and we're kind of going like this. Yeah. And you're like, it's not even close. Like just the difference between photo and eyesight wasn't even close. So I can't imagine the difference between Earth from space while you're in space, or photo of Earth from space. Right. A friend of mine is doing a space photography exhibit in Europe right now, 130 of my pictures, and they're on these giant, beautiful, printed on metal, pictures that mostly I took, some other astronauts took too. It's in near Munich right now. It was in Austria. And it's the best I've seen, like in terms of just walking through. It's the best experience of experiencing space. But it's still not the same. It just doesn't come. And on my first flight, I installed a cupola. It's a 7-windowed module. It's about the size of this table. And then there's 6 windows on the side. And it's on the bottom of the space station. So when you float up into it, you're looking up at Earth, right? Oh. And it feels like you're out in space. I mean, there's like the big window above you and all these things.
On the space shuttle, it was amazing. It's like an airliner. Like I was an airline pilot. You know, there's windows up there for the pilots to look out. And it's cool. So it's like driving through the Rockies or the hill country in your minivan. You're looking out the window. The blue bonnets look nice. But when you park and you get out, it's a lot cool. You're experiencing it. So the cupola was like that. It's the difference between looking out your minivan window at something and then getting out and walking through the mountains or whatever.
Because there's a name for astronauts looking at Earth from space. It's called the overview effect. Right. And it supposedly like just changes you spiritually, politically, socially. Why do you think?
I think it depends on the person.
Right. You said that. Be honest. What does that mean?
So some people have empathy. They have an open heart. They're willing to change. Like I've changed my views on some important things. I don't think if Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin went into space, they would come back some enlightened,
They'd
human
be like,
being.
I could have all that.
Exactly. How do I conquer? Let me go invade the moon or whatever. Or So I think it depends on the person. I think the types of people who are astronauts are generally good human beings and, they come back. But here's a terrible story. I'll tell this. I was up there and I flew with 3 different cosmonauts on different missions. And the 3 of those came back. And some other cosmonauts I didn't fly with did the same thing. They joined Putin's party, supporting the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
These men and women know better. They know that are Americans like obsessing about invading Russia and all that's the propaganda that they hear. Of course we're not. We don't care about Russia.
Right.
So these people were willing to support this evil, even having spent months in space. So
So you're up in space and you're seeing that borders
you're
are
seeing
an
Earth.
illusion,
right?
And that all this belongs to all the people, that we're all equal in this sense. And then you go home and you're like, this country deserves to conquer and subjugate that country. That you miss the lesson of the overview effect. Anton
Shkaplerov, I flew with him on the Soyuz. I have pictures on my phone with me and him together. He came back and he was like, Krym nash, which means Crimea's ours. He was just so big about that. I spent 7 months in space with this guy.
There's a beautiful passage in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. So he's the most powerful man in the world. And he says, to understand people, you have to take Plato's view. And he says, Plato's view, we could take this to mean like climb up to the top of the Acropolis and look down at what was then, most of the developed world.
Known world, yeah.
But like, you just think about in the ancient world, other than getting on top of a mountain, which was pretty difficult,
right?
You're not going to get that many views, right? So they don't even have what the average person has today, which is like an airplane, or even you think about what was the tallest building the Emperor of Rome got into. Maybe 3-4 stories, right? So there are going to be the opportunities to look down,
right,
and see the interconnectedness and the peacefulness of everything. Right. To literally take a bird's eye view, there's going to be exceedingly rare. But he says, sort of philosophically, you have to actively kind of take this zoom out view, and you see how trivial most of the things that we fight about, that we argue about, the terrible things we do to each other over this scrap of land or that scrap of land, and that this is sort of an antidote to those kind of imperial ambitions or those desires to compete, or even to like, obviously making your mark is important, but also I imagine when you look at Earth from a distance and you get a sense of the billions of years that this has existed, you probably stop going like, what's in my bank account? Or how do I get more followers on social media? Like the legacy stuff goes away. That's the legacy, the Earth.
Ryan, there's so many things to unpack. Everything you just said was so profound. I could talk for hours about it. You're not worried about what the Kardashians are up to when you're looking at Earth. And I remember thinking, man, Earth's been around for billions of years. It's going to be around for billions of years. So the things that I worry about are probably not that big of a deal. But there are some things that are important.
Yes.
What Russia's doing in Ukraine, causing misery, is awful. What's happening in Sudan right now, the civil war, is awful. I think the pain that AI might be causing to lots of humans on Earth and automation, there are important things.
Yes.
But most of what we worry about are not important things.
Yes.
And my crewmate, Samantha Cristoforetti, I think she said it best. When you look at Earth, it's the spaceship Earth that's going through the galaxy, right? We should all be passengers and not crewmates on that spaceship. So we should all like take some ownership.
We should be crewmates, not passengers.
We should be crewmates, not passengers. I said it wrong. Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
and that's a pretty profound observation. And it's so interesting. Your podcast, I was listening to your podcast preparing for this, about Seneca was having the same problems we had today, where you had to brown nose the emperor and tell lies for the emperor. The whole American government is based on a foundation of lies. Everybody who has a serious government job had to say that Trump won the 2020 election.
Yeah.
So literally, it's a foundation of lies.
The Department of Labor and Statistics
It
now has to think about not whether these are the job numbers or not, but whether it will please the emperor or not.
It's the Ministry of Truth in 1984, and we're living in that today.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book called "It Can't Happen Here."
Oh,
Sinclair
Lewis. Mm-hmm.
It's a tough book to read. It's not my favorite prose, but it's like reading the 2025 news. It is happening here. The follow-on sequel should be "It Is Happening Here." So the antidote, I think, and there's always been bad guys. There's always going to be a man. It's always a man who wants to make his country great again.
Yeah.
Ever since Seneca and Nero and whatever.
Yes.
The antidote to that is democracy, a well-functioning democracy with freedom of press, with freedom of speech, with right to assemble and petition the government for redress. That will keep those men in check.
When I would say in competing interests, each one doing their job and asserting the prerogatives of their office.
You mean like a Congress, a president, and a judiciary?
Yes, of course. That's exactly that's exactly what I mean. And that's why it was designed that way for a reason, that ambition would check ambition. So you don't go, it's what he wants. Let's give him what he wants.
We were given such a blessing from the founding fathers. They were such wise men. They had a lot. They got a lot of things wrong.
Yes,
with slavery and all that. But think about what a profound
they understood
success.
They understood human nature, and they also understood history. And much of what they were seeking to avoid were sort of timeless figures, which are always with us: demagogues, warmongers,
always,
fake populists. There's a guy named Catiline who attempts to overthrow the Roman government, and it's Cicero and Cato that stop him. And if you don't understand history, if you also just don't understand human psychology, you end up sort of repeating these things.
The problem, Ryan, throughout human history, some guys with swords could come in and change things, right? Yeah. The power, the overwhelming concentration of power, we've never seen anything like this in tech.
Yeah.
Information space, right? Like we all live in these little information echo chambers. And if you're in that echo chamber, you're never going to hear anything from outside that echo chamber. So the amount of power that that evil men can exercise, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it. In the old days, you could have an executive and a legislative and a Supreme Court, and there would be checks and balances, and you'd have a free press. And those checks and balances are tougher and tougher. And that's what worries me.
Well, I think separate from all that, and I imagine you spent a lot of time thinking about this at the Air Force Academy, because it's what it's all about.
Yeah.
They're not just teaching you engineering and how to drill and stuff. It's primarily character formation, because they understand you're going to be in charge of multi-million-dollar aircrafts. You're going to be, maybe you'll work at the Pentagon. You're going to be making life and death decisions.
Yeah.
And so what they're primarily trying to instill in these officers is, one, a broad liberal arts education, so you understand history and humanity, the fundamental values of Western society. And then you're also instilling in them ethics and character and principles,
right,
so they can make really good decisions under pressure. This idea now that it's like, no, these are war fighters. We gotta, no, the what makes the American military great compared to, say, the Russian military is the education and the values and the independence of our sort of officer ranks.
The 4-star nominees now have to meet with Donald Trump.
Yeah. That's the opposite of what you want.
That should be terrifying.
Yes.
That should be terrifying to every American. To politicize our military, that should be terrifying, among 1,000 other things. But the Air Force Academy and West Point and Navy, not as well, but the Air Force Academy, of course, I'm giving my guys a hard time. It was about leadership. I took philosophy. I was we used to call them basket weaving majors, but like the English and those majors, they all had to take mechanical engineering and chemistry and physics and calculus, and all the engineers had to take history. And it was such a great broad education, but also character training. But I remember my philosophy teacher, you would love him. We learned about John Stuart Mills and the categorical imperative and Immanuel Kant, all that stuff that I forgot about. He was Captain Jones. We used to have all military instructors, which was actually really, it was great for undergrad.
Yeah.
For PhDs, you want free thinking, but for undergrad, it was really good. He was super tall. He had no hair. He had giant Coke bottle glasses. Like if he went out in the sun, it would probably burn right through his face. And he was so goofy. And he had been on Wheel of Fortune. So he met Vanna White. And of course, she was like the hot thing back then. And we were all super. And he was so funny. And he taught me about philosophy.
Yeah.
You know what he taught me? He said, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
That is the definition of many politicians today.
Sure.
I hear from my Republican friends, well, yeah, we're gerrymandering, but you gerrymander too.
Yes.
I'm like, guys, we all sat through Captain Jones, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And the categorical imperative, ends don't justify the means. All these philosophical things I learned as a 19-year-old.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. The founders understood that a system that is based around personal liberty had to be checked by a country with character in the people, right? Especially its leaders had to be men, and now thankfully women, of high character and principles and honor, who cared about those things more than maintaining the office.
Yeah.
And you're in a tough spot when you erode that by word and deed, and you end up with people who don't understand what it means to be a representative of the people.
Right. Who was the French guy that came here in the 1800s? Lafayette wrote I forgot the name of the book.
Oh, you mean Tocqueville?
Alexander de Tocqueville. Yeah, he wrote the book about America. And I think his quote was, America's great because America's good. And his point was, like, we had character.
Yes.
And it's, of course, nobody's perfect. Even like Air Force Academy honor code people, everybody makes mistakes. But we at least agree that we should try to be good.
Yes.
And like when you make a mistake, you admit it. But that foundation of ethics and morality, I did a social media post about ethics recently, because it just seems to be disappearing, which
totally
frustrates the heck out of me.
No, I was when I was writing. So I've been doing this series on the cardinal virtues. So I did courage, which I think most people understand. I did discipline. I think most people understand why that's good. And then I did it on justice, which is primarily about ethics. And I was talking to this friend of mine who's an Air Force officer. His name's and he went to the Air Force Academy, and he was telling me about, he'd been a whistleblower a couple different times in his career. He saw a superior officer doing something, or he saw something in a program, and he sort of had to go public with it. And, we like to celebrate whistleblowers,
right?
But it's usually never fun for the whistleblowers, and almost always there's reprisals and consequences, right? And I was asking him, I was like, why did you do it? He's like, Ryan, I went to the Air Force Academy. I swore an oath.
Right.
And I was just like kind of shocked by the earnestness of I believe in these things. I went to this program. The government paid for it. And so I am held to a higher standard than and you go, that's what you want in a leader, someone who says, hey, this might be bad for me. This might be unpopular. People might not agree with it, but it's my duty to do this thing. Right. And that's what leadership really is. That's what character is.
Right. And we've seen today that there's just so few people. And it was true during Seneca and Plato. Sure. It's just most people are not willing to put their hide on the line and do the right thing. Like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney.
Yes. Kinzinger sat right in that chair.
He probably, he's a good friend of mine. So I'll give him a hard time. But yeah, I mean, he's like one of my heroes. Liz Cheney has more balls than the entire GOP male cohort.
So walk me through how someone can be brave under fire. Yeah. Or can go into space and take all those risks. And then they're like, I don't know, someone might say some mean tweets about me if I disagree with this. Or I might have a tougher re-election bid if I say something about this.
This is what makes my head explode. Some people are just a hardcore crazy MAGA person. I can actually respect them. They at least believe what they believe. There's a lot of folks right here in the great state of Texas that I might or might not be running against that know the right thing. They know the thing that they should do, and yet they still choose to do the other thing because they put party and self over country. And that's that's just completely unacceptable. If you really believe something, good. I can AOC, I can respect her. I don't agree with her policies, but she is who she is. I respect that. But the people who know better and don't do it. And I think the fear of getting shot is one thing. A lot of people can't get over that. Some people can face that. But the fear of getting ostracized, maybe that's I don't know where the Maslow's hierarchy of fear is in your brain, but people do not like to get ostracized. If you quit your religion, you get, or if you're at West Point, for the honor code at West Point back in the 1800s, you would get silenced. So if you cheated on a test or something, nobody would talk to you for 4 years, and very few young men could handle that. So.
Yeah, you'd think physical courage would be harder than moral courage.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
I don't think so either.
No.
Certainly lot of guys rarer.
I boxed when I was a cadet. A lot of guys can jump in, and getting hit is not fun, but getting ostracized or being talked bad about is, man, people don't like that.
Yeah, and you can always rationalize that I'm not actually being cowardly here. I'm not actually derelict of duty. I'm saving myself for some future conflict.
Right. This isn't great, but our party needs to stay in. I'll do some other good. And that's a slippery slope.
Yes.
It's not even slippery. It's like an ice covered steel 90-degree slope. Once you go down that path,
it's an insidious lie.
Yeah.
Right. Like, look, and there are some people who you want to still be there at the last possible moment to be like, no, this is the hardest of the hard red lines, and I got to stop you.
Mike Pence?
Yes. But you are lying to yourself when you tell yourself you're that person.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what Seneca was doing. Seneca was saying, hey, if I don't speak up, if I don't condemn Nero, if I don't stop Nero from killing his mother, he kept saying, if I get involved now, I'll be replaced by someone worse and things will be really bad. But you stay and you stay and you stay, and it gets bad anyway. Right. And you are not the indispensable man who needs to compromise every principle to stay in power.
Right.
And by the way, if everyone thinks that, then we're all just watching passively. We're all passengers, to go to your metaphor, as the ship's going down, and any one of us could grab the wheel and maybe do something.
The bridge is out. The train is headed towards the bridge that's out, and somebody needs to stop the train. Yeah. It feels like everybody's just riding along on the train right now.
I remember I was talking to Kinzinger about this, and he said, because it's been my experience talking to a number of elected representatives, is they'll passively talk to you about it too. They're like, somebody should do something. And it's like, you're one of 500. You're one of 100. What? And Kinzinger was saying it's like people in Congress think there's a super Congress.
Right.
Like that there's somebody else. This is literally what you were elected to do.
The impeachment. Okay, we saw what happened on January 6th. Clearly that's wrong. It shouldn't happen. And so many Republicans, we have former Navy SEAL here in Texas, voted that that's okay, rationalizing somehow that,
Sure.
And now here we are, right?
Yes.
Like you have to do the right thing when it's time to do the right thing.
Yes.
If you don't, you might not have that opportunity again.
But I think what people tell themselves, and maybe you could relate to this as someone who wanted to do something so badly, right? It's like,
I did.
My whole dream is to be, I don't know, chairman of the Federal Reserve. My whole dream is to be the head of the CIA. You tell yourself, hey, I've been working my whole life to get this thing. And not only if I speak up, so it's these two competing things. It's like, if I speak up, I'm out.
Right.
And then also, if I get on board, maybe it actually gets me where I want to go faster. So it's the fear of losing the thing that you crave desperately that makes you compromise on your principle.
Right.
And then also the temptation of a shot at the thing, which maybe deep down you understand you're actually not qualified for, like, I don't know, who's ever in charge of the FBI right now or something, right? It's a fast track for a thing that under ordinary circumstances you'd have had no shot in hell at. And so that's the wicked sort of carrot and the stick that gets people in line with something that under ordinary circumstances they'd see quite clearly.
But there's a lot of movies about that. What was the John Grisham novel, The Firm? Mm-hmm. This is a tale as old as time. It's going back to Seneca, where people compromise themselves to get the thing they want. It never works out. How many people in MAGA land everything Trump touches dies. And I hate to make this too political, but how many people how did it work out for Mike Pence?
How did it work out for Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, Nikki Haley, and is Marco Rubio ever, can he even talk to his dad at Thanksgiving? Like to compromise and sell your soul like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out in the long run.
It does not. But the temptation is always there.
And it always will. In the year 2500, whoever's sitting at this podcast table, they're going to be talking about whatever events of the day, people are going to be tempted to sell out.
Yes.
To get the thing they want. And that when they finally get it, it's not going to be what they thought it would be. And it'll be short-lived.
Yes.
And then when it ends, you're going to have to live with yourself.
So I imagine that they talked to you about this when you were at the academy. This is because this is the timeless thing for officers. It's the timeless thing for anyone in a position of leadership. But it's only really in the academy where they're explicitly training you for command and leadership.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was awesome. I mean, I had never been exposed to that. I never talked about ethics or any of that stuff. And my kids went to civilian college and they never, they don't, this is all foreign to them.
The academies and sports are kind of the only two places that they really build character in that way. And then in sports, there's obviously just the raging hypocrisy on top of it,
Yeah. But at least there's like accountability and discipline and working hard and whatever. So I think sports are great, but
I just mean at the collegiate level. Like the coach tells a nice story about, you know, character and selflessness and whatever, and they're the highest paid employee of the state.
I know. I used to love college sports, and it's just hard with looking at their payroll and
They're stealing signs.
We would, at the Air Force Academy, we had something called whatever. It was like a daily ethics class, and we would go through situations like cadets won't lie, cheat, or steal. I think most people know that's the honor code. We also had something that was called the toleration clause, or tolerate anyone who does. And they added that on, and that's a tough one.
Yes.
Like, it's one thing to not lie, cheat, or steal. It's another thing to turn your buddy in for...
Right.
And I went to the French Air Force Academy.
Conflicting loyalties there.
I went to the French Air Force Academy for an exchange, and they would never in a zillion years ever consider turning their classmate in. It was like, it was them against the academy.
Yes.
And actually that was kind of good in some ways, but the toleration clause is important because we see that in our government now.
Yes.
How many people who know better tolerate really bad things in this government? And but you know what? We had 4 years to talk about it.
Yes.
And when the freshmen come in, they're going to make mistakes. You don't expect freshmen to be perfect. By the time you're a senior, you're expected to be perfect.
Yes.
And because you're about to be an officer. And that time of talking, and not everything's black and white.
Right.
And I came away from my space flights thinking, like, I used to be a very black and white guy when I was younger, and now I kind of see things. There are things that are black and white. There is right and wrong, but there's a lot of gray areas in life in general. So, but it was important to have 4 years to talk about that. And you could talk about it with senior officers, and they'd go, hey, this happened and that happened. And most people don't get that. So that was an experience I treasured. I wish more kids had that.
Then and now people wrestle with, like, what is this? Aren't we just supposed to make them like big and strong and fast?
Lethal.
Yes, lethal. They got to be a war fighter. And well, first off, the F-16's doing most of the work. You know, like what you want is the brain inside, and you want the person who's able to think about, where this bomb is going and why is it going there, and all of that. And so I was telling you about the book I'm working on. I'm working on a book about Stockdale right now.
Oh, wow.
And he says, we're basically dropped in this hellhole, and we have to. The orders, he says, were laughably insufficient. Name, rank, serial number.
Right.
That's something that someone in Washington came up with.
That ruins a lot of men, unfortunately.
And so he's like, we had to come up with a civilization, a code, a system that was both ethical and practical, given the realities of our situation. And so it's precisely these kinds of vexing dilemmas that people are going to find themselves in. And again, most of them are not combat related. I think I had Alexander Vindman on the podcast. You think about here's a person trained in this same system, and then he hears something that again, you can disagree with whether what happened was right or wrong.
Yeah.
But what matters is that it raised concerns for him. And do you want a military officer who then has civilian sort of adjacent roles or political roles? Do you want them to experience something that's profoundly unnerving and then go, well, that's what's going on? Or do you want them to be guided by their conscience? That's exactly what you want to build in if you see the services as the training grounds for, generations of leaders in business, in politics, in communities.
When you don't have that, you have My Lai. Or unfortunately, in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were multiple bad things that went badly. My Lai was a massacre in Vietnam that got covered up. So I kind of laugh. A lot of people are like, well, I have my gun. So that's what keeps us free in America. I'm like, dude, you have an AR-15. They have F-15s.
Yes.
Like your gun's not going to win against the army. So you want the military to have ethics.
Yes.
You need those leaders to be doing the right thing. And right now, we're just taking a sledgehammer to the foundation. Every day that sledgehammer is hitting the brick. And the good news is we have a really strong foundation.
Yes. But
it won't last forever. Yes. So we need to stop hitting it with a sledgehammer and start to rebuild it, I think.
Yes. You don't want people who are just following orders. You want people who are able to parse and understand orders. And then you want that because that is also a check on the people giving the orders. You want people
loyal to the Constitution and not one man.
Yes.
I have friends who went through the Doge process and they had this horrendous 20-minute loyalty test. Did Donald Trump win the 2020 election? Will you support this? And it was like humiliating loyalty tests. And unfortunately, there's thousands of senior government workers who all pass that loyalty test. And that's terrifying.
Yes. And you are ejecting people who failed said loyalty test, but are hyper competent individuals who, again, these are all things we learned the hard way. We learned how dysfunctional and inefficient a political administrative state was.
I saw that in space, flying over the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah.
You see South Korea at nighttime, lights, beautiful, bright, vibrant, democracy, capitalist. Yeah. North Korea is a black hole.
Yeah.
There's a little white dot where Pyongyang. You can see a system where everybody salutes the dear leader and there's no ethics. And you can see a system where there's competition and,
Yes.
I could see exactly what you just said. I could see from space.
Well, you talked about Russia and Ukraine. If you have a military that is based on telling the leader what they want to hear,
right, you
get what was clearly, again, the rightness or wrongness of it, clearly a false picture presented to Vladimir Putin on how the invasion would go. Right. So just from a tactical and strategic standpoint, a government that cannot tell its leaders the truth for fear of their personal safety, right? It's going to go amazing. We have the best military in the world. It's full of neo-Nazis over there.
They'll fold in 3 days.
Yeah, then you bump into reality.
Right.
And we've had that at different points in American history too. Nobody told the American president the truth in Vietnam. And the American president didn't want to hear the truth in Vietnam also.
Yeah.
And that's why we ended up where we ended up. And we fed, a generation of young men into a meat grinder for basically no reason.
When I was a cadet, I struggled with Vietnam so much because I was like, what would I do?
Yes.
And I would serve my country, but I would hate it. I would have tried to, stop it. Did you see Ken Burns' Vietnam?
Mm-hmm. I've interviewed him too.
God, that's amazing.
He's the best.
I'm so jealous. Baseball.
We're also both not allowed to speak at the Naval Academy. Both of us had our invitations rescinded.
Because of recent thing. Yeah. My commander on my first space shuttle flight was a Navy grad, and I was Air Force. And I went back to Bancroft Hall at the Naval Academy, and I got a standing ovation. It was so cool. I was there. Cool. I was at the Naval Academy 2 days ago having crab cakes on the Severn River. I was at a family funeral, but anyway.
Not so good. But
yeah, in Vietnam, Ken Burns' Vietnam documentary, amazing documentary. He had audio from Truman through Nixon, and every single president was like, yeah, this is going badly, but we're going to have to pretend it's going well. Like every single president, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, LBJ, Nixon, they all lied about Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, you go to the idea of moral, physical courage. Part of the reason they didn't want to withdraw is they didn't want to be accused.
They didn't want to be the one.
For fear of looking cowardly, they did the cowardly thing. And then they forced other people to go do incredibly brave, terrifying, dangerous things.
That's so profound. For fear of looking cowardly, they did the cowardly thing. That was profound. I was in McDonald's. I posted about this. I was in McDonald's, my Saturday morning tradition, getting a McGriddle, and there was a Vietnam guy sitting there by himself. So we were talking with him, and he just started talking and about all his experience. And then another these guys who are their Vietnam hat, and I always thank them because my uncle made a point, and he was there, and he called himself a draft dodger. He joined the Air Force. That was his way of dodging the draft, so he didn't have to go in the Army. And he was traumatized until the day he died. He was on an Air Force base, but they got shelled. So the men that went to Vietnam went through a lot, and then they got back and they got treated like dirt. Yep. And it wasn't their fault that the president sucked at the time. Yeah. So if you see a Vietnam vet, tell them thank you. And I introduced these two guys at McDonald's, and they were like, 66. And I was there for Tet, and it was awesome to see this camaraderie.
Yeah. And H.R. McMaster in his book on Vietnam, which is fascinating, he says, the interesting thing about it is like, a lot of the generals thought we weren't being tough enough in Vietnam. Right. And then others came to think that it was unwinnable and we needed to withdraw. And he said, but the remarkable thing is not a single member of the Joint Chiefs throughout the entire conflict resigned in protest. Yeah. Exactly the same dilemma we're talking about. And one of them was asked, why didn't you resign? And he said, well, if I resigned, it would have been a news story for 3 days. Yeah. And then I just would have been another ex-soldier. And yet, if everyone thinks that way, what happens is you are continuing to rubber stamp and approve something that you, amongst a few others, are in a position to influence the course of.
So I think what we've determined, Ryan, is that people will always do this. Yes. Very few people will stand up and do the right thing with moral courage, and most people will go along with it and save their bacon. I just read a great book about Churchill, The Splendid and the Vile. Ooh, amazing book. Yes. Amazing book. Mm-hmm. And Americans think, well, we won World War II. We'll always do the right thing. It was our manifest destiny. Yes. God had no, we got lucky. Had a lot of things not happened, we would have lost World War II. We had Father Coughlin. We had fascists in America. We had the Nazi thing at Madison Square Garden. We were not preordained to win that thing. No. And until on December 6, 1941, most Americans didn't want to we were happy to let England, get smashed. It was like a Christmas Story where the kids out there and all the other kids just run away. They're not willing to help out their buddy. That's just human nature. So I think we need...
It was the moral courage of a handful of individuals that started the stampede that eventually led to the right thing.
FDR knew the right thing, and he was just trying to hang on because most of Congress didn't. Yes. And he knew the right thing. And anyway, it's just we need to be aware of that. And I don't know what the answer is. Yeah. But one of these days we're going to go down the wrong path, and it's not going to be recoverable. Yes. So we need to try and avoid that.
There's serious consequence. I think this isn't pretend. This just because a lot of this plays out on the internet or on cable news shows doesn't mean that it doesn't have real consequences. Right. Like a bunch of kids are dead because people decided to treat the federal government like a distressed company you could raid and sell off the parts, right? Or that it was an internet startup that you could move fast and break things. You broke something, and
millions of lives.
and those are just the tangible ones that happened right now. You're gutting our public health. You are making us unprepared for disasters. Right. You are all these things that we take for granted. And the federal government is not perfect, and America is not perfect, but it is the result of a lot of hard-won battles and decisions, most of them learned from painful trial and error. Right. And you're fucking with the inheritance of my children and generations of children.
Right. In the Air Force, we have a lot of rules. And we would always say those rules were written in blood. Right. Yeah. Somebody would die, and then we would have a new rule, like don't fly under bridges or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody didn't label a gun properly and someone got shot, or an explosive went out. That all these things, these safety, it's like that famous picture of the plane with all the bullet holes in it, Right. Like all the things, these are all the things we've learned under fire and conflict and doing it the wrong way.
Yeah. And so we have a president who is forcing loyalty to himself. He's making press submit When you make the press submit, that's really bad.
Yeah.
He's making universities submit. He's making the military submit. He's making the legal community. When you don't have lawyers, there's no more law.
Yes.
Right? You can't have these people submitting. All those people should be challenging the president.
Yes.
And he's forcing them to submit. And guess what? They submit. Tim Cook's at the White House kissing the ring.
Yeah.
Who's going to stand up? And if nobody stands up to that, we're going down a really bad path. I read the book. It can't happen here.
Yeah.
Written in 1936.
Look, a great leader doesn't need submit. They need a certain amount of buy-in from the majority
Right.
of people, but they actually welcome dissent,
Right.
and they can handle it. You know,
Right.
like I'm not threatened by immigrants or women
Right.
or minority groups because I know I'm good at what I do.
Right.
Right. I welcome competition.
Right.
And so there's something inherently weak and insecure about this sort of exclusionary roll up the ladder.
Right.
You know, how dare you criticize me? How dare you give me negative information? Like, why you can't handle it?
As a fighter pilot, the whining and the grievances, oh my God, that would last about 5 seconds in a fighter squad. Like you can't whine about stuff.
Yes.
Or you don't have grievance or you get kicked out of the door. So yeah, it's a bad situation.
So talk to me about the decision to run for Senate, because I imagine you could have a much easier life as a consultant for a defense contractor, or you could sit on a board, or
Right.
you could probably run for some much less contentious offices locally. You could do no one's making you do this.
I lost a bet in a bar. Is my joke. You know, the last few cycles I've supported other candidates with, I don't have a lot of social media, whatever, you know, a few 100,000. And I got to the point where I just couldn't sit by and watch this happen. I see the bridge is out.
Yeah.
And I see the trains going full speed ahead towards the bridge that's out. And there's a, verse, to those who much has been given, much will be expected. And I've been given a lot. This country has given me a lot. I feel like I have a unique experience. There's not a lot of folks with my experience between business as a small business owner in the energy industry and being a fighter pilot and astronaut. It's a pretty different thing. And I think in a state like Texas, that resume will play. Most people are not political nerds. Most people are not obsessing over the New York Times and Politico every day. Most people look at a candidate and they're like, I like that guy, or I don't like that gal, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think my background will play well in a state like Texas. And if I thought that I think that we have a lot of great candidates, but I don't think they're going to win in a state like Texas. And if I thought there were, I would just go support them and live the good life that I used to have. But I just didn't see that. So I said, I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. I'm at least going to try. And people say mean things about me, and that's fine.
I love Texas. I live here voluntarily.
Right.
I had family here a couple generations ago, but like I had no ties here. My wife and I moved here. I raised my kids here. I live in this small town instead of a big city. I love the people I know. I love my neighbors.
You got Whataburger.
Got a Whataburger. I have trouble wrapping my head around how it's even a conversation that we might elect a literal crook who not just cheats on his wife, but humiliates his wife, forces his wife to sit through his own impeachment trial.
Yeah. And vote for him.
For the cover-up he engaged in, where he somehow managed to not just be a criminal, but also be unfaithful to his wife and merge the two together. This is what he gets impeached for. And it's like he's a viable candidate. I mean, he's currently holding one of the most important law enforcement offices in the state, but he's a viable candidate for the U.S. Senate. How do we live in this upside-down world in Texas? I don't get it.
I think he's going to win the nomination. Ken Paxton's going to be John Cornyn is not going to win that nomination. Here's the problem. And I'm running as a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat. People know how bad Trump is. They know he's a liar. They know he's full of BS. And yet they still trusted him more than they trusted Democrats. Yeah. The Democratic Party told America that Joe Biden's not too old. Yeah. Back in 2016, when he left as vice president, I remember I saw him and I was like, ugh, I'm glad he's like, it's time for Joe to be done. That was in 2016. But we told America he's not too old. We put Kamala, we parachuted her in without a primary, and we lectured everybody about democracy. we said, don't worry about if you're against illegal immigration, you're a racist. I've been talking to voters all across Texas. I'm going down to the Valley tomorrow, and the Hispanic community on the Valley hates illegal immigration, not because they're racist, but because they want people to follow the rules. We told people the economy's fine, the stock market's up. Well, half of Americans don't even own one share of stock, right? So people trusted the known liar more than they trusted the Democratic Party. Yeah. And we need to be honest about that. Trump's underwater in every issue right now. People don't, even on immigration and the economy, they don't like Donald Trump. And on every issue, they like Democrats even less. So we need to be honest about that. We need to have a debrief in a fighter squadron or as an astronaut. We have a debrief after a thing.
What went wrong?
In the 24 election, what debrief have you seen? What national leaders have you seen? Chuck Schumer's still leading our party.
Right.
I'll say it right now. Chuck Schumer needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to our conversation about being a man or woman of honor. When you shit the bed or when things go bad on your watch, we've lost the cultural expectation that you resign in shame when you fuck up. Not that you need to be driven from public life forever and you should be humiliated and sent into exile, but you should go, I guess I messed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And we have messed up. And unless, look, you go to war with the army you have.
Yeah.
And the army we have is two-party system. We have Democrats and Republicans. So either you vote Republican or Democrat. And today, it's not Mitt Romney, George H.W. Bush Republican Party. That party is dead. It's a disaster. It's a path to fascism. Yeah. So you either vote for that or you vote for the Democratic Party, and they're a train wreck too. And so what I'm hoping to do is bring some renaissance to the Democratic Party.
Well, think about this. So I live on a ranch out here. I live on a dirt road, right?
Wow, awesome.
That is deliberately so if the road was 60 feet wide, it could be taken over by the county. The county would have to take care of it. Very deliberately, someone set it up as 50 feet. Right. So it'll never be taken over the county. So it means it's all of our responsibility. And then we have none of our neighbors will come together and form an HOA. Right. So it's a voluntary.
It's a very Texas thing.
Yes. And it's wonderful and terrible.
Right.
Right. There's like a hippie commune on this long street. There's ranchers. There's a bunch of people living in trailers. There's people with Trump flags. All very different political beliefs.
Sounds like Austin.
Yeah. But we come together and we have to take care of this road. We voluntarily contribute. I saw one of my neighbors out there with a tractor like 3 days ago, right? I think about this guy who's out there fixing it with his tractor, voluntarily solving a collective action problem on his own, right?
Right.
And then he drives that tractor back to his house with a Trump flag in front of it. And I sometimes go, if Trump or Paxton or Ted Cruz lived on this street, do you think they would be contributing? Do you think they'd be a good neighbor? And so that's something I've always just struggled with is like, you see these people who on a personal level have these values and live their life by a certain code. And yet time and time again, they support and forgive people who not just don't live by that code, but make a mockery of that code.
They're actively evil in some cases.
I mean, we know what Ted Cruz does when there's a problem is he gets on the first flight and goes as far away as possible. I mean, that's what to me is so interesting about the Ted Cruz thing. It's not just that he got on a flight when his fellow Texans were freezing. I actually don't need him there handing out water. He probably is unpleasant to be around and not very helpful. It's that he didn't even, for all his years in Washington, he didn't even think there's probably some people I can call. Like he doesn't even know how the levers of power work to get anything done.
So here's the really terrible thing. A couple months ago, Ted Cruz is the most hated guy. Al Franken.
Yes.
Has the funniest thing. He's like, when I was a senator, I liked Ted Cruz more than most of my fellow senators. And that's saying a lot because I hated Ted Cruz. So Democrat just lost Ted Cruz by almost 10 points and he's running again a couple months later. Like, guys, we need to win. And because there's a threat to the Republic and we need to win and we need to get better. Like what works in a liberal district here in Austin is not going to work statewide. This is Texas. What works in a liberal congressional district in Dallas is not going to work statewide. And we have to figure out We have to be open and honest and say what's going to win. It's going to be some type of common sense. It's not going to be the traditional old school Democratic Party. Texans have voted. It's been over 30 years since a Democrat won. 30 years.
Yeah. Any statewide office.
I joke. Do you remember the Texas land commissioner back in 1994? And people are like, huh? I'm like, yeah, that's the last time a guy won in Texas.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam was at the top of the charts. We need to get better because we need to win. The redistricting.
Yeah.
And I'm glad these guys were willing to put themselves at risk, and it's cost them money and their families and inconvenience. And I'm glad that there were people willing to do it, to leave, to break quorum, leave and stop the redistricting. And 2 weeks later, they're back.
Yeah.
And the redistricting is going to happen.
Yeah.
And they're claiming that's a victory.
Right.
What the hell kind of victory is that?
Yeah.
It delayed it by 2 weeks. And now Gavin Newsom's going to fight fire with fire. And I'm glad Gavin Newsom's going to fight fire with fire. So now there'll be California voters disenfranchised, just like there's Texas voters. It's like when I was an F-16 pilot, I was nuclear certified, and I knew if the Russians dropped a nuke on us, they might call me up and ask me to go drop a nuke on that. I trained for that.
By the way, this is why they train in ethics and
right,
because of the weight of the decisions that you.
It was nuclear weapon. I literally had a B-61 dial a disaster. We called it. You could select the yield. Anyway, retaliating is not a victory. No. There's no victory in nuclear. It's a mutually assured destruction. You have to do it. Of course, you're going to do it, but there's no victory in that. So what we just did it was 2 weeks of performance.
No, and it's always on
performance.
It's always on the defensive, right?
The way to win is to win elections. The way to actually have a victory for Democrats is to actually win an election. We haven't done that for 30 years. So we need to stop having performative politics and actually win elections.
No, and it's this idea that, like, I don't know, I've driven all over this state, and you drive through some swaths of Texas and you're like, this is big enough for all of us, man. like we should be inclusive. We should be welcoming. This could be one of the great, I mean, it already is, but I mean, you think of the potential of this place. Yeah. And then you have the people who are currently in charge on this sort of exclusionary, backwards facing, agenda. And it's like, why don't we just talk about all the awesome shit we can do? Let's do some awesome shit.
I think most Texans are like that.
Yeah.
The problem is we have partisan primaries.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to do is have a democratic reform. We need some serious on a lot of different things. But when you have a partisan primary, the MAGA extremists are going to elect Ken Paxton. Yeah. And by the way, John Cornyn's no better. The voting record is going to be exactly the same. Ken Paxton's a lot more prickly, and he's took the corruption, and Cornyn's a nice grandfather who's going to vote the exact way.
Not a degenerate felon.
He is not, but he also just said we're going to send the FBI to get these guys. That's and he posted a picture of himself reading Art of the Deal, and the problem with Cornyn is, going back an hour, he knows better, and he still does what's wrong. Ken Paxton is just bad.
Yes.
John Cornyn knows what's right and wrong, and he chooses actively to not do what's right. That's the problem with Cornyn. But so Paxton's going to the primary, and in what I hope doesn't happen, what the message I'm trying to do, but Democrats, they might nominate somebody that makes them feel good in the primary and makes them feel sad in November. And what we need to do is nominate somebody who's going to make us feel good in November when we win the general election.
Yes.
But the partisan primary system is one of our many problems in this country. We need to fix
it's
that.
Basically like 3% of the population picks the representative for the whole state.
And if you're gerrymandered, literally the other party has nothing to say about it, because gerrymandering works. Like it's a really smart way to do things. If you want to just have raw power, it works.
Okay, so slightly more positive note as we wrap up. All right, so when you were a kid, kids wanted to be astronauts.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, kids wanted to be astronauts. My kids want to be YouTubers.
Yeah.
How do we build a society in a world where our kids want to do that kind of stuff again?
Part of the problem is, video games and AI and stuff, you can actually see everything, that you can experience things online. It's like you don't have to do them in real life. I'd rather do things in real life than online. A friend of mine raised 2 teenagers without devices or anything. And you can do that for 8-year-olds. But man, by the time you're in high school.
Yeah, it's hard.
And they made it a deal like, you'll get a car, you'll get this and that. But they literally, and these kids, I sat down for lunch and they looked at me and they had a conversation about meaningful adult things while looking at me for an entire lunch. And it was like, oh my God, you raise these kids great. I've done a lot of speaking on all 7 continents, and I was in Vienna a few years ago. I was in the hall where Beethoven first played his Ninth Symphony. It was like, it was cool. Yeah. It was amazing. And this thing hit me. So I wrote I used to have a blog, and I called it The End of Genius, because back then, if you wanted to know some knowledge, you'd have to come and get a book and read about it, and you'd have to actively study. And now everything's so instant that we don't have to go through the same disciplines that people used to do. I don't want to go back to back then. I think are a lot better. But there were still there's some benefits for sitting down, doing some research, and writing and thinking as you write an argument on a piece of paper. And with AI, kids don't have to think anymore. I think that's going to, if we think our brains are fried now, just wait till an entire generation grows up without ever having to think and do critical thinking.
If anything, an AI world is going to demand from people is the ability to think critically, because even the best models like hallucinate like 20% of the time. So if you don't know how to, people who can't separate fact from fiction, misinformation from real information, truth from fantasy. We're already struggling in a society that has trouble doing that.
Right.
If you can't go, nah, that doesn't sound right. I don't think that's true. That doesn't make sense. The only way you can get anything good out of AI is if you can engage with it and you have a base of knowledge to bring to it, to even to ask it to do the right things.
Right.
So again, it comes back to that broad liberal arts education that your kids are going to need.
Critical thinking. If I was king, every kid would graduate from high school with a class on critical thinking and ethics. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Texas has decided to respond to this existential threat by gutting its public schools.
You know why? Here's another thing we need to do is get money out of politics, because Greg Abbott has a mega billionaire dollar.
Yeah, one dude decided this.
He gave him like $10 million or some huge number. 1% of Texans thought that, for those who don't know, we're talking about vouchers. They thought that vouchers were important. My kids went to private school through elementary school. It was great. I paid for it out of my salary. And then they went to public school. And here we are, because one man gave millions and millions and millions of dollars. Dan Patrick forces it through the Senate. Yeah. And Senator Angela Paxton voted for it. And here we are, where the public school is going to get hurt and private schools are going to get built up. I'm a product of public school.
Me too.
It's a hugely important thing. It's what gives kids opportunity.
Especially in these small towns in Texas.
They're the ones going to be hurt the worst.
I know.
And look, there are some really nice, great private schools that are incredible. There's a lot of them that are not incredible. And those kids who go to those are not going to be learning any critical thinking. They're going to be taught a very narrow and inaccurate, information.
No. And it's like, wait, I know $10 million sounds like a lot of money. Yeah. And it is, but it's like, wait, you sold out
billions,
an entire state, of millions and millions of people and an education budget of billions for what? Again, this goes back to, are you or are you not a person of honor? Is this what the people want, or is this what somebody who has leverage over you wants?
Right.
And that's what Texas politics is primarily that these days, unfortunately.
Right. Well, that's the genius of our founding fathers. They gave us this system that had checks and balances.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that that's strong, because there's always going to be people who do the wrong thing. There's always going to be people who don't have honor. So we need to strengthen our checks and balances and our press and those institutions. So there's hope. We just need to get back to doing that. And also teaching kids critical thinking. Like you said, that is the most important skill for the future. Most kids aren't going to have it.
Yeah.
I mean, so we need to, that's an educational emergency, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, my kids use devices. They explore these things. They play with AI. But it's like, how do you make them excited to do real things? And there was a New York Times piece that was, it was like the U.S., a nation of lawyers, goes to war with China, a nation of engineers. Like we're really good at fighting and arguing over things.
Right.
But what we need to be is that country that sent people to the moon,
built
stuff.
Yeah.
And there is this sort of, you want people who want to do cool stuff in real life.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that happens in school. When I was in school, reading is what did it for me. The first book I read was a little kid. I read one of those cardboard books about Apollo. And that's what I was like, oh, this would be cool. I want to be an astronaut. I read the right stuff as a teenager. Like reading is what did it for me. I used to read science fiction. I used to read about mountain climbing, and I liked adventure. I hated English class. I don't know, all those English books I hated. I was a terrible student, and now I'm an author. I've written several books.
Yeah.
But it's about things that I like. So my advice to any parents is, man, get your kids reading. Let them read stuff that they like and that they'll enjoy. And there's nothing better, I don't think, that you can do for a kid than reading.
Yeah. And to try to, what I try to do is take that energy. Yeah. That's like, I want to watch YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And we watch videos about places and things, and then we go do those places and things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then whenever my kids want to do stuff in real life, I try to go, like on Sunday night, it's like 5 p.m, and my son goes, "Can we go to Barton Springs?" It's like an hour drive from my house. And I wanted to be like, no, and I had to be like, wait, no, I want a kid that likes the outdoors.
Yeah.
That when they have that sense of adventure, there's a voice inside them that says, yes, do it, not don't do it. And here I'm at a crossroad. I can say no and instill no, it's too hard. No, it'll take too long. No, it's too cold, whatever. Now I got to say yes.
Barton Springs is awesome. I took my kids there when they were little.
Yeah.
There's some rivers there, and there's a golf course, great golf course. And,
the little golf course.
Yeah.
But again, also, it's like all the things that people love about Texas, not all, but a good chunk of the things that people love about Texas were built by the government they love to shit all over. Do you know what I mean? Like
the Johnson Space Center.
Yeah, the state parks were all built by the WPA.
Right.
Barton Springs is a crown jewel run by the city of Austin.
I did not know that. Yeah.
But people just don't think about where these things that they love come from.
Right.
Like they were trying to build a trash transfer facility. Because Austin's so big. I live out here.
Right.
They're trying to build like a transfer facility where they're just, they just take the trash from one city and put it in a smaller city with less power.
Right.
So we went to this sort of meeting where we're all talking about it, and the Texas Environmental Quality, the environmental agency that would be able to be like, hey, actually, you're trying to build this next to a creek, bad idea. And then, it was interesting to watch these people get upset that this agency was toothless to protect them. And it's like, yes, right? All the things that you want, you think you don't want this thing until you want it.
Well, how about the floods?
Yes, exactly.
The guy at the National Weather Service whose job was to warn people took the early out that Elon Musk gave him. And now we're shutting down weather research, and they don't have, I went to Ukraine a few times last year delivering ambulances on humanitarian. Those alarms the air raid alarms, they're going off every night. In the worst flooding zone in the world, they don't have those alarm systems here in Texas for $1 million.
The federal government offered them one.
No, we don't want, the federal government's evil. Yeah. We better not take money for an alarm system. So do I love the government? No. Is the government bloated? Does it need to be? Of course it does. Yes. I spent 30 years at NASA and the Air Force. We used to joke that NASA puts the no in innovation. Of course it's bureaucracy. Of course it needs to be better. But it does some pretty important things.
Yes.
It does some, you know what? I didn't have to worry about polio. Mm-hmm. Thank God we have vaccines.
Yes.
My parents had to worry about that. Their classmates died from polio.
I don't know if you've flown into Austin recently, but it's one of the worst airports in the country right now because it usually has about 50% of the air traffic controllers it's supposed to have.
Yes. So government is important. Yes. Driving on the roads or doing road construction. Schools, there's a lot of things that the government does. So they're not all evil. Should it be more efficient? Yes. Should we destroy it? And I think at the end of the day, that's what's happening right now. Yes. They're trying, because if you destroy government, who's going to stop the AI companies from growing and taking over the world? If you're going to destroy government, the IRS, who's going to check up to make sure the rich people are paying their taxes? Yeah. That's a genius thing for billionaires, is to kill the IRS, which they've done very effectively. So the problem is, Ryan, if you're listening to Fox News and Newsmax and those podcasts, you don't ever hear this.
Right.
All you hear is about how evil they are, and they're going to turn your kids trans, and they're going to put chips in your vaccine. That's all you hear. And so how do we break in?
Yeah, no, you're outraged about these other things that are egregious or weird or uncomfortable. It is weird why, I don't know, why was there that weird drag thing at the Olympics? Like, but that's not what you should be worried about, right? So we have a media system that's really good at taking fringe things and making people deeply uncomfortable with them, meanwhile, things that are not weird, but will keep you up. Every time I get on a plane, I have to think, oh man, like, are there enough air traffic controllers?
Yeah.
I speak all over the country. So I used to be able to do a lot of, if it's at 3 p.m, I can leave my house in the morning, get on an airplane, on a Southwest flight, do the thing, fly home that night, see my kids the next morning. Right.
Yeah.
And now it's like 3-hour delays are so common, more common than they were in the 50s because we fucked up the FAA. Those are the things people should be outraged and upset about. We should ask ourselves why other countries without a fraction of the economy we have things like paid leave and have things
family
like
leave. There's something I want to implement. Of course, you should have family leave when you have a baby. When I had my first kid, I was at test pilot school. We literally had him induced on Friday night so I could be back at work on Monday.
And by the way, who has great schools, great benefits, all that stuff? The military.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
The government can do things right.
Yeah. When it is a priority, and when the people in the system demand that they get those things, they tend to get those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, government's not the answer to everything, and I'm a big private sector fan, but you need to have a functioning, well-run government. And what's happening now is they're destroying it.
Yeah.
And the people they're putting in are sycophants. They're having to pass this egregious loyalty test. People are afraid to do things. My neighbor has a child in the FBI. And oh my God, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad, the stuff that they're having to do. They were working in political corruption in Florida.
Yeah.
That division got shut down.
Right.
Actually, they were investigating a Democrat.
Sure.
Not anymore. That's shut down. No more investigating political corruptions. They got sent to pull immigrants off the street as a trained FBI is not, we have a massive secret police. If the ICE budget were a military, I think it would be the 16th largest military on earth.
Yeah.
It's insane. It can't happen here.
No. And look, I live out in the country. There's a lot of different people from a lot of different places out where I live. Yeah. And I go, I was driving down 812, which is this little sort of farm to market road. And this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And this car kind of swerves and it flips. And so me and another guy, we rush out to the car. We break the window. We pull the guy out. He's sort of shaking. He's standing there. And then I see him text something on his phone. And, then a few minutes later, another car pulls up. The guy gets in and drives away. And I realized, this guy can't wait around for the police or the paramedics. Right. Right. And some people might take the moral of that story as we have, whatever. To me, the moral of the story is you want to stop people at the border. Yeah. But once they're here, you want them to be not afraid of law enforcement. Right. You want them to be functioning members of society. Right. You want them when they see a fire to call 911. Yeah. You want them when they get in a car accident to wait for police. You want, what I mean? When they're being beaten by their husband or boyfriend. Yes. And that's in Houston. Unfortunately, there's been some stories where women are getting killed. Because or if their neighbor is dealing drugs, you want them to call the police. Yeah. You do not want law enforcement to become politicized because it makes everyone less safe. You don't want them masked either. Yes. What the heck is up with mask? If you're in North Dakota and it's January, all right, wear a mask. But if, unless there's some tactical reason you have to wear a mask, which there almost never is, get the masks off, man. This is America. I was in Moscow in 2012. I was training for a flight. I was wandering around and there was a giant mob. So I was like, this is weird. There's not usually mobs. So I went over. Of course, I should have left, but I went to it. It was Alexei Navalny. It was like Beto. He was the Beto of Russia. Yeah, because Putin was coming back. Remember, he did that switch. He switched president and vice president, basically, with Dmitry Medvedev. The Russians were actually protesting in 2012. That ended. But the police there wear masks. Yeah. They don't have name tags. Yes. So that's what we have here now. Yes. I saw it with my own eyes in Russia. And yet that's what we have here now. So there's a lot of things that need to change, but that's one of them. No, it can happen here and it is happening here. And it's present tense. Yes. Yeah. So let's, I think you're
listeners probably understand that, and they're hopefully willing to do
Yes.
do things about it.
All right, you want to go check out some books? I'll show you the
Yeah,
bookstore.
I'd love to.